Hey guys, Brad here with Custom Offsets. We got another episode of I Never Knew. This one's gonna be called Gear Me Out. And the topic is gonna be differential gearing. A lot of people write in and ask us questions about this because most people who shop with us are buying larger tires or larger wheels and tires or doing a suspension lift with wheels and tires. And so we get the question a lot, if I go to a bigger tire, do I have to re-gear my truck? And there's not really a clear-cut answer to that, but we can kind of talk about some of the points or some of the things involved in the gearing aspect and kind of just try and help you out, I guess, and help people understand more so what it's all about. So a gear ratio obviously is a ratio. There's two parts. Usually it'll be a number, say, for example, 373 gears. You may have heard of that. That's a pretty standard gear ratio. So that would mean 3.73 to 1 ratio, which then would refer to, what that means is, so the transmission will spin your drive shaft, and then the drive shaft will spin the pinion gear on the differential, and then end up by spinning the tire. So what that ratio means is the drive shaft has to spin 3.73 times to make one revolution on the rear axle or any of the axle, the drive axle. So to spin your tire one revolution, your drive shaft has to turn 3.73 times. And it's kind of similar to, I guess, a lot of people use the example of a bicycle with multiple speeds on it, and you can set your gears and you can gear it really high, so basically you're pedaling super fast and the bike is really not going anywhere. It's kind of the same idea with a truck or a car. And why people want to re-gear is because when you change tire size, you're effectively changing your final drive ratio, not just the rear end ratio, but the final ratio. And I guess we can talk about that now. I set up some tires to kind of illustrate the effects it has. And so this is just obviously a trailer tire. So just to give you two extremes, what we'll have here is I put a tape line so we can watch it and see a full revolution and basically how far it goes. So basically this will kind of illustrate the effect of outside tire diameter has on gear ratios. So we'll rotate this tire one full revolution, which gets you to about here. We'll lay this tire down here, approximately where it was. And then this tire, which is a 39.5, we'll be able to see with one full revolution, it ends up here, which it's kind of hard to tell. We're just eyeballing things, but as you can see, the larger tire diameter travels a further distance. So with that being said, when we get back to our gear ratios like we were talking about before, a 373, now that one axle revolution is going to actually move you further. So that would mean it actually takes more energy or horsepower or torque of the engine to move that vehicle because of the change in ratio. Also, there's factors such as the mass of the tire, so the weight and the rolling mass and resistance that also uses horsepower. So what basically people try to do is, if your truck, we'll just stick with 373s, is a 373 gear ratio, and they start out with a 30-inch tire, say, stock, and they go up to a 35-inch tire. People will ask, do I have to re-gear? Like I said, there's no clear-cut answer to that, really. The short answer would be no, you don't have to re-gear. You don't really have to do anything. But if you want to maintain similar acceleration and similar RPMs at cruising speeds, that type of thing, because with a larger size tire, and if you stick with the same gear ratio, if you're going down the highway at 70, your truck or car, the engine will actually be at a lower RPM because of the change in the final ratio because of the tire diameter. So People will re-gear to try and maintain similar to factory or even a higher than factory ratio once they go up in tire size. So it kind of all depends. Nowadays, most trucks are powerful enough where people will run 37s and don't even really have to re-gear because the trucks have enough power to get you going. That's really where you would feel the gear ratio difference come into play, is from a stop. So starting from say 0 to whatever 60 is where you'll notice it most. So people who like to gear their trucks down in order to combat the effects of the larger tire size. In some instances, which we'll talk about here with this truck, which is strictly an off-road vehicle. This is a truck, one of my friend's trucks, and this is he uses this really for, trail riding and rock crawling, that type of thing. And in this kind of instance, we like to run as much gear as possible because we want the most mechanical advantage we can get. So we want to be able to basically go as slow as we can, but put the most power to the wheels. And so, for example, this truck has a 488 gear ratio, which is a lot higher than you probably won't see any stock vehicle with such a high gear ratio, numerically high, that is. But that's exactly what this truck is built for. So if you were to take a vehicle like this with such a high gear ratio and try and run it down the road, in top gear, your engine's going to be spinning a lot higher RPMs than you would like. But it's fine in this application because that's what we want. We want to go slow. We want to go, for off-roading, you want the control of the gear reduction that you get from a higher gear ratio. And so this truck has 37s on it, and with a 480 gear ratio in low range, low transfer case range, you can basically just put it in first gear and it'll just crawl by itself. You don't have to get gas or anything, and that's because of that gear reduction, giving your engine an advantage over the resistance of the wheels and the weight of the vehicle, the mass of the object. So back to when should I gear my truck? Like I said, there's not really a clear-cut answer on that one because a lot of people will go from a stock tire to say 35, and a lot of people won't even notice the difference between the two tire sizes. But you also have to remember, on a four-wheel drive vehicle at least, there is a differential on the rear axle and the front axle, and they have to be the same. So if you got a four-wheel drive and you want to do gears in your axles, you're definitely gonna have to do both, the front and the rear differentials. Otherwise, four-wheel drive will become completely useless because one set of wheels will want to be spinning at a different speed than the other, and it don't work that way. So the cost is obviously something to consider because, it's hard to say even a price really because everything's different. On a Toyota like this, it's super expensive because it's Toyota. But if you have a GM truck with a 10-bolt, 8.5-inch axle, which is a very common size, you can get a gear set for $150 to $200, and that would be per axle. So you say you're into it, $400 for just the parts. Install is definitely recommended to have done by a professional because there's a lot of tolerances that need to be set in terms of pinion load, preload, backlash, etc. So, if you take it to a specialist to install it, you're probably looking at another easily $500 to install. So you're in it close to $1,000, and it's definitely not a bad thing to do, but is it necessary? Not really, especially on a street-driven truck. Pretty much all of our customers, I'd say at least 95% of them don't re-gear ever. But it depends what you're doing. On an off-road truck like this, we like to have as much gear as possible. So we spend the money to re-gear because we actually take advantage of it. Whereas even on a street truck like my own, I'm not going to re-gear it when I go to bigger tires just because I don't really need to. It has plenty of power to get me going. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it. I'm trying not to get too in depth and trying to keep it somewhat brief. But you could go on and on about this kind of topic for a long time. But I hope we cleared some things up. I'm sure there's still a lot of unanswered questions. But feel free to write into us at info@CustomOffsets and ask me questions, or someone will help you or direct you in the right direction. If you still have questions, because I know this can be kind of confusing topic, but anyway, I think that's going to be it for this episode. That's, like I said, this is shit I never knew. Gear me out with Brad. Custom Offsets. Check us out: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all those social media platforms. And that's going to be it for now. Take care, y'all. See you later. There's a forklift there.